NHK World TV from Japan.
It's the top of the hour. Welcome to Newsline. Japan's Prime Minister is heading a large Japanese business delegation on his latest world tour. Shinzo Abe is in Bangladesh, where he hopes to strengthen ties through economic cooperation. He's also scheduled to visit Sri Lanka during his 3 days in South Asia. Abe arrived in the capital Dhaka on Saturday. In talks with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, Abe said Japan would provide Bangladesh with up to $6 billion in economic assistance over the next 4 to 5 years. Abe also said he hopes to strengthen security cooperation between the two countries. Abe earlier spoke at a business forum of corporate executives.
Bangladesh is located in a strategic area between Southeast Asia and India. It's an important country for Japan to expand trade and investment.
Abe said Japan will work with the Bangladeshi government to build infrastructure to promote business and investments. People across India are looking forward to getting a new source of energy. Their Prime Minister signed a deal to get uranium for nuclear plants from Australia. Australian leaders had ruled out supplying uranium to India because it's not a party to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. They changed that policy 3 years ago and began negotiating. Prime Minister Tony Abbott closed the deal.
India has scrupulously dotted every I and crossed every T when it comes to international law. That's why we are happy to trust India with our uranium.
This is a sign of our trust in each other. We have begun a new era of cooperation.
Australia has the world's biggest uranium reserves. Leaders hope to create jobs by boosting production for India. They also want to strengthen economic and security ties. Indian leaders are trying to tackle a shortage of electricity. They plan to double the number of nuclear reactors in their country to around 40 by 2020. They hope their uranium deal with Australia will also help them reach a nuclear cooperation agreement with Japan. Officials with China's biggest e-commerce firm say they're about to make the largest ever technology listing in the United States. Alibaba Group plans to raise billions of dollars in its upcoming initial public offering on the New York Stock Exchange by the end of this month. The officials submitted a document to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. It said Alibaba Group Holding will set the IPO at between $60 and $66 per share. That will provide Alibaba with funds totaling $24.3 billion. The figure is more than the $16 billion raised by Facebook's IPO 2 years ago. Until now, that was the largest amount ever raised among IT firms. Alibaba Group is led by former schoolteacher Jack Ma. He launched the firm in 1999 in Hangzhou in China's Zhejiang province. The company operates a business-to-business website, Alibaba.com, and also China's largest e-commerce site. The holding company now has business operations in more than 190 countries and territories. Company officials want to raise funds so as to expand its business overseas. Officials at the United Nations are looking for millions of dollars in emergency aid to help combat the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. It first appeared earlier this year and has since spread to 4 West African countries. More than 2,000 people have died. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon was to the point after he discussed the issue with WHO Director General Margaret Chan and Senior UN System Coordinator for Ebola, David Nabarro.
The disease is spreading far faster than the response. People are increasingly frustrated that it is not being controlled.
Pan wants countries to provide medical workers and supplies. He also asked for $600 million in aid. UN officials say they hope to contain the outbreak within 6 to 9 months. There are signs of hope that a treatment for the Ebola virus may soon be available. Officials with the World Health Organization report that 2 vaccines are being developed for use by the end of the year. WHO officials held a two-day meeting with medical experts to discuss how best to make use of experimental drugs. The panel has proposed that blood and serum from survivors be used immediately.
We agreed that whole blood therapies and convalescent serum may be used to treat Ebola virus disease, and that all efforts must be invested into helping affected countries use them safely.
Kini also says 2 Ebola vaccines are undergoing safety studies and look promising. She says if the results are good, the WHO will start using the vaccines in November on health workers in West Africa. Japanese health authorities are concerned that an outbreak of dengue fever could be spreading. More than 70 people who visited a park in central Tokyo have already fallen ill after being bitten by infected mosquitoes. Now officials have confirmed 2 more cases not linked to the area. Health ministry officials say the infections have so far been limited to people who visited Tokyo's Yoyogi Park and surrounding areas. But they say a man in his 30s contracted the virus after visiting Shinjuku Central Park, about 1 kilometer away. A second man in his 60s who developed dengue fever says he had not been to either of the parks. The man says he doesn't remember where he was bitten, nor has he ever traveled overseas. On Saturday, Health Minister Yasuhisa Shiozaki met with local government officials and medical experts. They agreed to expand the search for infected mosquitoes in central Tokyo. Officials will step up fumigation efforts and declare more places off limits. This is the first outbreak of dengue fever in Japan in about 70 years. Officials from 10 countries have agreed to take a stand against Islamic State militants. They formed what's being called a core coalition, which will be headed by the United States and Britain. Foreign and defense ministers from 10 NATO countries met on the sidelines of the summit. The focus was on the Sunni insurgents that have taken control of parts of Iraq and Syria. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel say the ministers agreed to provide military aid to Iraqi government forces. The 10 countries will also act to cut off the group's financing and to prevent foreign nationals from joining the militant group. South Korean military officials say the North has fired 3 short-range projectiles toward the Sea of Japan. They say the launch took place on Saturday morning near the city of Wonsan. The projectiles flew about 210 kilometers northeast before landing in the sea. South Korean military authorities say the devices could be a new short-range missile being developed by Pyongyang. Scientists have described what they believe was one of the biggest dinosaurs that ever walked the earth. They dug up the remains in what's now Argentina and say it weighed nearly 60 tons. The researchers announced their find in the British magazine Scientific Reports. They say fossilized bones suggest the reptile was 26 meters long. They believe it was a herbivore and a member of a group called titanosaurs. The scientists dug up the remains over several years in the Patagonian region of Argentina. They were able to calculate how big the creature was because they found 70% of its bones. They believe the dinosaur lived 77 million years ago, and because it was so huge, they gave it the name Dreadnoughtus, meaning fears nothing. That was the news from Tokyo. Now let's take a look at the extended world weather forecast. Thanks for watching Newsline. More to come here on NHK World, so stay with us.
paranormal phenomena simply defy common sense. Spiritual entities like